Imagine Earth 100,000 years from now. Our cities are gone, the roads have cracked, the towers have fallen, and everything we stored online disappeared the moment the last server stopped humming. Somewhere beneath several meters of dirt, a future archaeologist discovers a small black rectangle. The glass is shattered, the battery is dead. Whatever language was written inside it is now completely inaccessible. Publisher, they study the object carefully. They noticed that almost every human carried one. People stared into it while eating, while walking, while driving, sometimes even while talking to another human standing directly in front of them. After years of research, they reached the only reasonable conclusion. This was probably a sacred black mirror used for daily religious rituals. And honestly, they would not be entirely wrong. But that raises an uncomfortable question. If the people of the future could misunderstand us so badly, how badly might we have misunderstood the people who came before us? What if civilization is not a straight line? What if it is a loop, built, erased, forgotten, then built again? We like to imagine human history as a clean, upward line. First, humans lived in caves. Then they discovered farming. Villages became cities. Cities became empires. Empires discovered machines. Machines gave us computers. And computers gave us the ability to argue with strangers at 3 in the morning. The peak of human achievement. In this version of history, knowledge constantly accumulates. Every generation knows more than the one before it. Progress may slow down, but it never truly moves backward. It is comforting. It makes us feel like the inevitable final product of history. But real history does not look like a line. It looks like shattered glass. Different societies developed different technologies at different times. Trade routes opened, then vanished. Cities grew, burned, were abandoned, and disappeared beneath forests, deserts, and newer cities. Languages died. Writing systems became unreadable. Skills once taught by thousands could disappear when only a few specialists remained. Civilization did not march forward together. It advanced in fragments. And sometimes, entire fragments went dark. History only looks continuous because we connect the pieces that survived. The people who disappeared did not get to correct our timeline. And every few decades, archaeologists discover something that forces us to adjust what we thought ancient people were capable of. Consider Göbekli Tepe. More than 11,000 years ago, groups of hunter-gatherers constructed monumental enclosures filled with enormous carved limestone pillars. Some of those pillars stood more than 5 meters tall. These structures appeared before the region had developed the kind of settled agricultural civilization once assumed necessary for construction on that scale. Not a giant forgotten empire. Not visitors from another planet. Apparently, aliens receive credit whenever humans move a particularly large rock. Göbekli Tepe was built by people whose social organization was simply more complex than our old model expected. And that distinction matters. Göbekli Tepe does not prove that an industrial civilization existed 12,000 years ago. It proves something more embarrassing. We underestimated people because their tools looked simple. Then there is the Antikythera mechanism. Recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck, this corroded collection of bronze gears turned out to be an intricate astronomical calculator. It modeled celestial, lunar phases, and calendars, all using mechanical components packed into a wooden case. Something like a computer. Not an electronic computer. Not a secret smartphone manufactured by Zeus Incorporated. But still, a machine whose sophistication surprised the modern researchers studying it. And for centuries, almost nothing else quite like it was known to have survived. That is the problem with the past. We can only study what survived, not everything that existed. Imagine trying to understand our civilization using only the objects that remain after 10,000 years. Paper disappears, wood rots, hard drives corrode, magnetic storage degrades, and cloud data has a particularly serious preservation problem. The cloud is not actually in the sky. It is in a building that requires electricity, cooling, replacement parts, software updates, and several exhausted technicians called Kevin. Remove the infrastructure, and most of our digital civilization becomes unreadable remarkably quickly. Even when an object survives, its meaning may not. A keyboard without a computer is just a board covered in symbols. A credit card without a banking network is a colorful piece of plastic. Stone survives better than cloth. Ceramics survive better than songs. Monuments survive better than ordinary homes. Disasters may preserve one place while completely erasing another. What remains is not necessarily what mattered most. It is simply what was hardest to destroy. So when we look at an ancient culture and see stone tools, stone walls, and stone graves, we are not seeing the full civilization. We are seeing its most stubborn garbage. We also make another mistake. We imagine technology as a collection of objects. But technology is not the object. Technology is the entire system required to make that object possible. Take a smartphone. To produce one, you need mining operations across multiple continents. You need purified metals, synthetic materials, precision manufacturing, chemical processing, global transportation, satellite communication, electrical grids, and software engineering. You need factories containing machines that require other factories to build them. No single person knows how to create the entire system. Give one of our phones to the most intelligent engineer in history, but remove modern infrastructure, and that engineer cannot build another one. The phone is only the visible tip of an enormous pyramid of accumulated knowledge. Now destroy the pyramid. Close the mines. Break the supply chains. Lose the electrical grid. Scatter the engineers. Stop teaching the next generation. The device may remain for a while, but the ability to recreate it disappears. And once that ability is gone, the object stops being technology. It becomes an artifact, then a curiosity, then a legend. Knowledge does not disappear only when books are burned. It disappears when nobody remembers how to rebuild the machines that printed the books. A civilization could preserve stories about flying machines long after it lost metallurgy. It could remember cities of light long after the last electrical system failed. It could pass down distorted memories of machines, rulers, and disasters, until engineers became magicians, aircraft became dragons, and historical events became myths. There is currently no convincing archaeological evidence that humans, or another terrestrial species, built a technological civilization comparable to ours in deep prehistory. No ancient power stations, no fossilized aircraft factories, no suspiciously prehistoric customer support centers. Although the absence of customer support may suggest they were more advanced than us. But scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank explored a related thought experiment known as the Silurian Hypothesis. They were not claiming that a previous industrial civilization existed. They asked whether we would be able to detect one if it had existed millions of years ago. The answer is less reassuring than you might expect. Earth is very good at deleting its own surface. Wind and water erode landscapes. Sediment buries structures. Continents deform. Oceanic crust is continually recycled into the planet through plate tectonics. Fossilization is rare. Cities occupy only a tiny fraction of the Earth's surface. After millions of years, direct evidence such as buildings, roads, and machines might become extremely difficult to find. A civilization could be reduced not to a city waiting beneath the ground, but to a thin chemical anomaly in a layer of rock. An unusual change in carbon, synthetic molecules, a sudden extinction pattern, traces of industrial pollution, evidence that something briefly altered the planet and then stopped. An entire civilization reduced to one confusing line in a geologist's spreadsheet. The Silurian hypothesis does not prove that someone came before us. It reveals how difficult proof could become across deep time. And it asks us to consider something humans deeply dislike. Absence of evidence matters. But the geological record is not an all-seeing security camera. Still, erased evidence is only one way we might overlook the past. The Silurian Hypothesis asks whether time could destroy the kind of evidence we expect from an industrial civilization. But there is a second possibility. What if we are expecting the wrong kind of evidence in the first place? Chemical traces might reveal a society industrial enough to alter the planet, but they would tell us much less about a civilization that never became industrial in our sense of the word. What if sophistication did not look like factories, engines, and electricity? And when we measure every society against our own machines, we risk confusing different with primitive. The mystery is not necessarily that ancient people possessed hidden lasers. The mystery is how many human possibilities vanished because the material evidence did not survive. How many ideas were discovered, used, and forgotten? How many people solved problems whose solutions died with them? How many times did humanity learn something important only to begin again? And then there is us. We believe our civilization is different, global, connected, recorded in almost unimaginable detail. Surely we cannot be forgotten. We produce more information every day than ancient societies produced in centuries. But quantity is not permanence. Most of our information exists in formats requiring very specific machines and software. A clay tablet can remain readable for thousands of years. A modern storage device may become useless because one connector is no longer manufactured. Our most important records are not carved into mountains. They are protected by passwords nobody remembers, stored on servers owned by companies that may not exist next century. Humanity has finally achieved immortality. Subject to the terms of service. If our civilization collapsed suddenly, the first generations afterward might remember exactly what was lost. Their children would hear descriptions. Their grandchildren would inherit broken machines. Later generations might preserve only symbols and stories. The old world could become a time of impossible abundance. Metal birds crossed the sky. Voices traveled invisibly across the planet. People spoke to glowing stones. Machines answered every question. Well, machines confidently answered every question. Centuries later, those memories would sound like mythology, not because they were false, because the infrastructure proving them true was gone. Far in the future, explorers walk through what was once a modern city. The skyscrapers have collapsed, steel has rusted, tree roots have torn through the streets. They discover an underground chamber filled with rows of identical porcelain objects connected to pipes. They debate its purpose. A laboratory? A healing temple? A ceremonial purification complex? It was an airport bathroom. They find motivational posters and conclude we were an intensely spiritual species. Then they discover billions of images of the same animals. Cats, dogs, and one suspiciously handsome black crow. At last, accurate history. A statue of the CrowsFlying mascot is placed inside a museum. The plaque reads, "Unknown avian deity associated with anxiety, sarcasm, and failed economic decisions." Acceptable. Perhaps there was no earlier civilization with satellites, nuclear reactors, or computers. Perhaps we truly are the first species on Earth to reach this particular level of technology. But that is not the most disturbing possibility. The disturbing possibility is how little needs to go wrong for everything we know to become incomprehensible. Civilization is not stored inside our buildings. It exists between people, inside schools, inside institutions, inside supply chains. It exists inside thousands of skills passed from one generation to the next. It is a living network of cooperation and memory. Break enough connections, and the lights go out. Not only the electrical lights, the knowledge itself. The people who come afterward may stand among the ruins and see only crude stones, strange symbols and objects whose purposes they cannot understand. They may call us primitive, They may invent explanations for our buildings. They may turn our disasters into myths. And they may believe, just as we do, that their civilization is the final one, that history led inevitably to them, that the mistakes of the past cannot happen again, that they will last forever. So perhaps history is not a ladder. Perhaps it is a wave. Knowledge rises, complexity grows, civilization reaches higher. Then the network breaks, the memory fades, and somewhere in the ruins, another group begins building. Again. Anyway, remember to subscribe. It may be the only evidence our civilization leaves behind. The crow taps the subscribe button carved into a stone tablet. That should last. Probably.